Hi, my name is Alan Gleeson, the CEO of Contento, and your host for this episode of SaaStock's SaaS GTM Unlocked, where we'll be talking about the state of play in SaaS GTM. Hi Martin, before we get going, I'd love to get an introduction, a little bit about yourself, and then maybe talk us about Gong a little bit.
Of course, Alan. So I've been with Gong 2 years now, and I head up our enterprise sales team. Gong was founded 9 years ago, and it's the proverbial war story. So our CEO, Amit, was CEO of another company, and he had the quarter from hell. And when he went around and asked 10 different people what happened, he got 10 different answers. So he looked at it and said, there's got to be a better way to understand what's really going on in the front lines, and then how does that bubble up insights to leadership throughout. So that's 9 years later. Gong is 4,000 customers, just over 1,000 employees across 3 different continents.
Give us a little feeling for what the actual functionality of Gong is like. So what is the tool?
So what we look at is, we're looking at how do we empower organizations to understand what's really going on the front line. So if you think about it, whenever there's a frontline salesperson, CSM, whatever it might be, all of their interactions are ingested by Gong, so we capture it via Zoom call, emails, across other providers that we have. And then it's about, like from a rep level, it's about how does it make me more productive? And then from a manager level, it's about, well, how do I get better insights and visibility into what's really going on in my business?
Yeah, I think as a CEO myself, one of the things that was often frustrating was conversations when you weren't in the room, often with salespeople, and wondering, were they, answering the right questions? Were they putting the company forward in the right way? But I guess Gong helps you get a more visibility, without being too big brotherish, more visibility as to kind of performance of different functions, I guess.
Exactly. And when I think back to when I led sales teams before I had Gong, I would have to do what a lot of sales leaders have to do is, I'd have to ask the reps what's going on. I'd have to ask the reps to fill in a CRM. I'd have to ask the reps to fill in more fields in CRM because I need to understand more of what's going on. With Gong now, we remove all of that. So in actual fact, and we might get into it later on, but it's about, when I have my one-to-ones now, I'm going in fully briefed on what's going on because Gong tells me what's going on. It serves up the insights. If there's a red flag, if they've mentioned pricing, if we've actually talked about the product in the right way, I'll be able to see all of that beforehand. Hugely
powerful, and I guess the other thing is loads of use cases, right? It's not just for a sales function, right?
Yeah, it's not. That's where a lot of people kind of think of us, and we have a huge use case there. But if you think about CS, so even hand over some sellers to CS, like post-sale. If you think about product, one of the best and strongest use cases we have is product wants to understand what's going on. Well, how is our new messaging landing? How is, what do customers feel about our actual product within this? And before, they'd have to go to the seller, they'd take up their time, they'd ask them, and with the best will in the world, sellers have happy ears. I've been one, I lead them now, but it's like, how do you get the true, authentic, objective feedback right to product? And there's lots more within that, but yeah, it goes right across the go-to-market function.
And I guess part of it is with remote as well, it's quite attractive because again, you can have almost access to, people can still work remotely, but you're still not losing those insights, right?
Correct, and I think now, in the post-COVID world, there is more of this in-person piece coming back, so we have developed an app where you can still record the conversations and it will pull it back into your system so you'll see it there. So even if it is virtual, that's kind of a standard use case, but even when we go in person, which is happening a lot more, we now have the app which will record all of the interactions as well.
And I guess AI can play a role in sort of some of the heavy lifting in the background, is that right?
Look, there's no getting away from it. The AI train has left the station and we're either on it or we're trying to catch up. And so Gong was an AI first company. I don't know how our founders come up with it. They're either geniuses or just read the market. And we've been built from day one on AI, and that flows throughout our product. Simple things like, so if you're trying to get up to speed on a deal, let's imagine someone leaves or you're a leader like I who needs to understand. What I would typically have to do is go ask the rep. Now, because of the Ask Anything functionality Gong has built, I can literally go in and prompt it, and it will go back through all the calls, all the emails on that deal, and it will tell me. So I can say, what's the biggest objection that we've had on this? What's the likelihood of this closing? What are some of the biggest concerns that they have around this deal? And rather than the rep having to tell me, it will mine all of the calls, all of the interactions, the emails back and forth, and give me those answers.
Hugely empowering in some ways, right? Because it gives you, as a manager, it almost gives you a superpower because you don't need to consume so much time in all these interactions, right? I guess that's part of it, right? You can actually get a much bigger picture without having to consume the same amount of time, on all these one-to-ones, if that makes sense.
And I love that, right? Yeah. So as a manager, but it makes my one-to-ones more productive. And actually what it also does is, and this is a frightening stat that's been around since Forrester, but Salesforce tell us again this year, 70% of reps' time is spent on non-selling activities. Yeah. So that's like filling in a CRM, writing notes, sending emails, all of that. So what Gong, but there's other, like, what we do is we take that away. So in actual fact, after a call happens, our system will write the email for you. You sense check it and you send it.
Yeah.
So that's gone from it taking you maybe an hour, maybe 40 minutes depending on the length of it, to literally minutes. And then it will prompt you when to follow up. It'll prompt you how to follow up. So it's really just, instead of this 7, which is an alarming statistic, because if you think about it and you break it down, it sounds like a lot, but it's actually people logging in on a Monday, and from Monday to lunchtime on a Thursday, they're not spending their time on selling activities. And that's an inordinate amount of time. So anything we can do to give them back that time, which Gong helps with, is just it's gonna give them what they want. They don't want to be doing admin. Sellers hate admin. They want to be selling and conversing with clients.
I mean, I guess what I like about it, in the nature of your role, is you can almost dog food your own product, right? So by using Gong in your day-to-day life, you can almost inform the feature set and understand the direction of travel and get better with prompting and so on, right?
Totally, and you're absolutely spot on in terms of, like, so I would spend 90% of my days in Gong. It's not on other tools. Sure, we've got Gmail, we have a CRM, we need one ourselves as well, but I would spend 90% of my time in Gong.
Yeah, which again is testament to the kind of the efficiency of the product, I guess, and to your point, if it can cut down the time for everybody and give you kind of direction as to kind of where to focus energies, then very, very kind of efficient way of doing things, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Excellent. Just talk to me a little bit, changing tack slightly away from probably Gong to the wider macroeconomic situation, right, and the climate. What you're reading of the tea leaves in terms of the context at the moment? Are you bullish? Are you positive? Is it, it's been a challenging couple of years for lots of tech companies, but looking to the next 12 months, I guess, what's your sort of sense of direction travel?
I think it depends on the day of the week in sales, and it depends on how the deals are progressing and things, but look, there's no doubt about it. We're in time of unprecedented change, and like I said, that historically low productivity. However, I'm still very bullish about what's coming. I think like I said, AI is here. We've got to embrace it. It's not going anywhere. It can only add to our lives. Sure, there's a lot to be figured out, and there's a lot on the airwaves about it, but this is a seismic shift, not just for the SaaS industry, but across the board. And how can we embrace it in a way that makes us more productive? And the thing with AI as well is that it's about quantity, it's about quality, and it's about context. So you need a certain amount to be able to feed these AI engines, but then you need quality. Not all AI is created equally. So you can use ChatGPT and it's great, but it doesn't understand the context of your business. So how do you engulf that quality, quantity, and context? And then it's going to allow you, and that's one of the reasons I'm so bullish about where we're going.
Just curious, because one thing that I'm interested on is whether, and this doesn't have to be Gong specific, but would be interested in your view on it, is can sort of smaller, earlier stage startups sort of take advantage of some of these technologies? Because, part of the genuine query I would have is, do you need to be a big enterprise to be running something like Gong because you need the volumes and the data and the sophistication in your team? Or is it that smaller companies can start benefiting from the technology?
So we're right across the size of companies. So we work with the Fortune 100 companies, but then a significant percentage of the companies we work with are the 10 to 5 licenses.
Okay,
so you don't need to be these massive organizations. You just need to be set up in a way that you can actually get the value from it. So you need a certain number of sellers, like I said, somewhere between 5 to 10. You need to be making a certain number of calls, certain number of back and forth, but you're going to get an inordinate amount of value from that. Now, the value that's there and the use case is similar. It's just a bigger scale if you look at the Fortune 100 companies I mentioned, but undoubtedly, like, our commercial sales team are doing incredibly well, and they would be selling that kind of 5 to 10, 15, 20 licenses.
Wow. And tell me, and I'm probably dragging you back to part of the conversation a minute ago, but is there any insights that you've come across from all the data and analysis that you've done that are almost like sales tips, right? Is it, because obviously the tool can tell you talking times, it can tell tone, it can tell a lot, but for again, companies earlier on their journey, is there any sales tip that you think that you kind of could say, actually, these are good tips to share for everybody from, patterns that you might have seen?
Yeah, look, I think there's so if I look at I'll go on both sides. So the kind of the smaller companies and then the larger enterprise, what we see. So on the smaller side, there's if like we see ourselves, if I use Gong example, like if we bring in a certain persona and we have them engaged, our retention rate goes 3x.
All right.
So actually getting specific personas in, and we can see that when they're on the tool. The other end of the scale is like strategic initiatives. So like McKinsey tell us that 70% of strategic initiatives fail. And one of the reasons is that if you think about so February 2 years ago, we launched this new messaging. So we all got in a room, that's even outside of all the work marketing and everyone else did to actually come up with the new messaging we were going to use. typically what would happen is you spend all the time doing it, you have to wait a quarter to see what's actually happening. What Gong allows you to do is it allows you to track it in real time. Is it being used? What stage of our sales cycle has been used? Not only that though, when it's used, what's the impact on the win rate versus when we don't use it?
Right.
And then how are customers responding to that? So actually having these things called smart trackers that understands the context of what's happening, it now allows you to track in real time these strategic initiatives.
So it must be great for your sales team, right? Because you've got all these rich feedback mechanisms and data that can help them all perform a lot better, right? It's almost this notion of continuous improvement using Gong to sort of help improve the quality of the salespeople from a training perspective.
Yeah. And like I said, so it's not just me, it's ICs, it's leaders, my leader, she spends all of her time on Gong as well.
Talk to me, just changing tack again a tiny bit, Martin, in terms of sales functions, right, and SaaS sales functions, right? So what are some of the characteristics that they need to be successful? So obviously we've talked a lot about the tool here, right, but are there other things that you think for a sales team to be successful they need to be thinking about?
Look, one of the things we're seeing more and more at the moment is understanding what outcomes your product drives, right? So like at a foundational level, like you obviously need to hire, onboard and retain the right people. Then it's about like, so who is my ideal customer? And then who's my ideal profile within that customer? So it's not always sales, it could be RevOps, it could be enablement, it could be the CIO, whoever it is, but understanding that. And then it's understanding like what's the messaging these people need to hear and aligning that messaging with the outcomes they want to drive. So it's all well and good me coming in and telling you we can do this, this and this. Well actually, what are the results you want? And then how can I enable you to drive those outcomes within it? And then I think, look, there's metrics. And the challenge is not metrics, it's the insight you want to drive from those metrics. So you can track win rates, you can track average deal size, you can track conversion rate from MQLs to SQLs, all of that. But it's actually, what is the insight we're really trying to uncover? One of our customers, what they've realized is, when they run pilots on a sales cycle, their win rate goes up by 38%. So that's just, again, understanding how you use tools, like what's the insight you're trying to drive out of it.
And I think that's a key point as well, because we've all been victims of falling into the traps of kind of looking at data and putting up lots and lots of metrics. But I think your point is measuring metrics is only one part of the puzzle. It's only really worth measuring it if you can derive an insight that changes the behavior or enables you to kind of change something, because otherwise it's just a data point that's just almost meaningless, right?
Precisely, and tying it then to like, companies typically have a handful of business goals they want, like how's this driving towards that? Connected to that. The more connected tissue we can have there, the stronger that the use of that tool will be.
Which again is almost flipping away from focus on features, more to kind of jumping the fence, as I'd call it, and understanding what their requirements are, which is then benefit driven, and again kind of brings you back full circle. So
exactly.
Fantastic. So a couple of last questions from me. So again, a lot of people watching this will be sales leaders, right? Predominantly in SaaS. What are 3 things that you would want them to take away from, let's say, your journey working in Gong and your experience today? So again, we might revisit some of the stuff you've talked about, but if there's 3 lessons from your journey that you'd like to share, sales leaders watching this, what would it be?
I think, look, go back to that stat I shared. Number 1 would be is like, how can you enable your team to be as productive as possible? Where am I taking up their time where I don't need to? Like, do they need to be in all these meetings? Do they need to be filling in all these forms? Do they need to be filling in all these fields in CRM? Spoiler alert, they hate doing it.
Yeah.
So in actual fact, how do I make them more productive? The second thing is how do you get true visibility into what's really going on? Not subjective, not happy ears from reps, not them telling you, great deal, it's absolutely going to close, and then all of a sudden it doesn't. How do you get true objective visibility into what's going on? And the third thing for me would be around embracing AI. So this is here, it's only getting bigger. It's only going to use case and the value that it's going to add is only going to grow. It's like, how do you use this in a way that benefits your business? And you didn't ask for it, Alan, but I'll give you a fourth. One of the principles in Gong is enjoy the ride, right?
Yeah.
Like this is incredibly tough, and it's been a really tough couple of years for lots of companies. We're also incredibly privileged to get to do this.
I think that's a key point, actually. We can get sort of overwhelmed with our own functions, but actually you are right. It's it's amazing innovation, amazing sort of AI deployment, amazing world to work in tech. So actually, tough as it may be on times, it's all very much relative, right?
Completely. And it's trying to, in the last couple of weeks we lost a deal, and it's really trying to remember that in those tough moments. It's all well and good when things are going great, but it is an absolute privilege to be part of this.
No, absolutely. So Martin, great to talk to you, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate that, thanks.